This is the new internet. It's going to completely disrupt Web 2. And you can play this through venture in crypto. You can play this through liquid funds, and you can even play this through the majors.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Level Up Podcast, presented by the Medici Network, the exclusive community for financial institutions to engage with blockchain native funds and founders. I'm your host, David Breiter.
And I'm your host, Sean Farrell. Before we kick things off, make sure to hit the subscribe button and follow us on Twitter for the latest episodes.
This podcast is for informational purposes only, and nothing herein should be considered financial, legal, tax, or investment advice. The views expressed by our hosts and guests are their own and do not reflect those of the Medici Network, Fundstrat Global Advisors LLC, Finality CP Management LLC, or their respective affiliates. All listeners should consult their own professional advisors as to the legal, tax, financial, or other matters before making any investment decision.
Now, let's get into it.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Level Up. We have a very special show on deck today that I am fired up for.
Yeah, me too, Sean. It's going to be really a continuation, I think, of the special episode that we had a few weeks ago at Medici LA at the conference. And with that one, and we can hopefully link to it in the show notes, we interviewed a lot of leading allocators, investors, and even some media personalities to really give folks an idea about what Medici is all about.
That's right. Hopefully everybody got a pretty good vibe of Medici, Medici LA. And today we are going to be talking with the man who brought Medici LA together, Adam Winnick, founder of the Medici Network and Finality Capital. Adam, how are you doing?
Great, Sean, David. Thank you guys for having me on. I love your podcast. You're killing it. And I would just say thank you first and foremost for not making me come on to the podcast during the event so I could enjoy that martini.
A much deserved martini.
I think so.
Taken, not stirred.
Well, Adam, let's kick it off like this. You know, how would you describe what Medici does?
Candidly, it depends who I'm talking to, but the general pitch I give is the raison d'etre, for lack of a better term, is to support broad institutional adoption of digital assets. That's what we care about. We want every institution in the world to be able to hold digital assets and go even deeper and deeper over time down the rabbit hole. And, you know, ostensibly, what we do is we do events, we do killer events, we do research. I think we do really cool research based on this network we have of people who come to our events who are really high quality people. And at these events, we invite funds, both venture funds and liquid funds, who come to meet allocators, people who invest in funds. And then we also invite founders. Actually, the funds themselves actually help us invite the founders. And the founders want to meet the liquid funds or other vehicles that might be able to buy and absorb their tokens, including ETFs now, and some of these digital asset treasury companies like MicroStrategy or MicroStrategy for XYZ. That's what we do. And when I talk to allocators, principally, my pitch to them is, you know, go beyond Bitcoin to beat your benchmark. We really want to help them explore the world beyond Bitcoin and look at other projects where their token might be more of a productive asset and explore like this idea of a new internet, Web3, for instance.
Yeah, and you know what? I think Medici is such a great name. And honestly, it's something I get asked a lot. I think I might know because I've been to the first Medici, but, you know, tell us, Adam, where did you come up with the name Medici?
That's a perfect opportunity, if you don't mind me, to share my screen. And I'm just going to bring up the very first deck from March 2018, where I pitched Medici to the first host committee members. And you'll see here that the name was actually an acronym. So I was always a fan of like those big US congressional initiatives where they just completely bastardize the acronym. They take like the first two letters of the first word, they forget one of the letters of the second word or third word, and put it all together. So you can kind of see how meeting of digital currency institutional investors is, you know, reflective in the acronym of the word Medici or Medici. But the other thing is I didn't want to just have a acronym. It had to have some meaning. So I tied it to the Medici family, which was a family, an Italian family. I studied in Florence for a summer. art history, great sponsors and patrons of the arts, from the Medici family, who are really an innovative banking family who help provide access to credit when credit was sort of illegal at the time. And they use these international bills of exchange to facilitate trade between textile merchants or textile manufacturers and their raw material suppliers, and really created like an early form of international commerce that was permissionless at the time. So that's where the name came from. I thought it was a fun way to use the acronym. We've dropped the acronym since then, but that's where the name came from.
That's great. I'm a big fan of congressional acronyms as well. I think Congress these days kind of has a cheat code in ChatGPT. They probably just use that now, but there's some really good ones out there. How did you, so obviously there's a need for Medici, understand why funds would want to meet allocators and protocols would want to meet investors. How did you come up with the idea to formalize this?
I was an early investor in Metastable, Naval Ravikant's blockchain fund, and he spoke beautifully about blockchain. He was invited to speak about it at a friend of mine's conference I was invited to, who hosted one of the coolest conferences I've ever been to. It was 150 people, no name tags, off the record, invite only, and it was essentially focused on macro. He had sovereign funds, sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, endowments, top macro hedge fund managers, and macro hedge fund guys at Culture are intellectual omnivores, really. They needed to like understand a little bit about everything. So blockchain was topical in January 18. And Naval was speaking. I'm sitting next to an allocator, the head of Brown Endowment at the time, Joe Dallin, who now is an investor at Blackstone. He runs their hedge fund business, Blackstone Multi-Asset Investing. And Joe didn't know me. He turned to me and said, Adam, I love crypto, but institutions can't hold tokens. And a light bulb went off in my head. And I can tell you more about why I invested in blockchain to begin with and why I like blockchain. But, you know, why I started Medici. My father sold Howard Marks his first high yield bond when he was Mike Milken's partner at Drexel. And I always knew and understood the way my dad's business as not junk bonds, but high yield, right? We don't like use the word crypto. I use the word digital assets or blockchain. How that industry really helped finance new kinds of networks. In that case, telecom networks, and new forms of ownership. In that case, small companies buying big companies, or what we call the LBO market. And a light bulb went off, and I ran over my friend Steve, who hosted the event, and I said, Steve, I'm gonna host the first ever institutional investor conference for crypto. I'm gonna do it right next door to the Milken conference. I'm gonna use a format just like yours because your format's incredible. And he said to me, Adam, I hate crypto. It's a scam, but I'll help you. And look, I get it from his perspective. He didn't want to attach his brand to it, and that was the right business move for him. And thank God for me and Medici that I was able to build this business with his support, but without worrying about what other people thought. So it started with one of the first events. Now we do events around the world, and it's really a community, and we leverage the community for research. And here we are now with a podcast started by you and the two of you and Almira, whose lovely voice. It's great to listen to at 1.5 speed on the disclaimers.
That's right. Almira is the one that actually, makes us look good. So appreciate all she does for the pod.
And people should just shout out to Almira, by the way, Sean. We should just say, I don't know what Almira's Twitter handle is, but if any protocol wants to be on Level Up.
Yeah, we need to make that more front and center.
Let's link that one in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely. But Adam, I think that's really interesting. I like the whole premise of new financing mechanisms being an enabling technology in and of itself to enable new forms of commerce and business. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, it's a novel asset class that institutions didn't like, that changed industries. And if you go to Medium Medium / at Adam _Winnick, you'll see my very first keynote in 2018, where I talk about like crypto and junk bonds.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've hinted at it, but maybe we could unpack your background a little bit more. What makes you, Adam Winnick, the right person to bring this all together?
Well, I think I'm a late bloomer, so it helps to have still be hungry and finding my product market fit at almost 50 years old. But I think, look, I told you the personal side of it and the connection to my father. One of my business school professors at Stanford was Andy Ratcliffe, and I consider him a mentor. He's, a lot of people quote him. He's sort of credited with creating the phrase product market fit, which actually goes back to C. Blank, who is a great author. But Andy said to me once in our class that the best entrepreneurs have vision and authenticity. And, I always wanted to be a founder. In fact, my background is partly like failed founder, but they say those who can do, those who can't coach. So here I am. And, the personal side of it was important because it gave me some kind of authenticity that I knew what it was like to be part of a volatile fringe industry with questionable legal frameworks to operate within. It married finance and technology, which not only did the high yield industry help technology companies, but I spent my first 20 years of my career, or after my first couple years in finance, traditional finance and credit, working at CIBC in high yield origination, and then for a credit hedge fund, I spent commercializing technology at universities and then investing in some pre-IPO companies during the first internet bubble. So I never became like a great tech investor. I never became a great fintech investor. I never became a great credit investor, but I was kind of like a jack of all trades, and it kind of came together here. So I had this like authenticity of this experience and this vision of what this industry could be, a vision of this industry could be better than it even thought it could be. And that's what I try and do. I try and elevate this industry. I wanted to go to a conference that I wanted to go to, and I didn't see one. And I had to create a conference that a person that is a Web 2 leader, an institutional allocator, felt comfortable in. That did not exist in blockchain. And look, I've managed money for pensions and endowments before in my 20s. I've, worked with top tech founders in my 20s. I mean, one of the people that used to source deals for us, my venture firm started the Sequoia Scout model. Before it was the Sequoia Scout model, it was an evolution of something that Stuart Alsop and Alsop Louis, before that NEA, created based on what we did. And the head of General Catalyst today used to be one of our scouts. So we have this like experience, and I guess it was a freak. I don't know.
No, I don't know if freak is the right word, but multifaceted maybe. I don't know. But you certainly have quite the extensive background in a lot of different fields that have very distinct parallels to crypto today. Probably could spend an individual podcast on each subsection of your background. But I do want to chat more about Medici itself. Like I said, obviously.
Yeah, Sean, let me just say one thing. I'll just say one thing. The Medici logo is, maybe this secondary logo of like a yin yang. And the yin is like chaos and the yang is order. And like, you can't be afraid of the chaos. That's like, and a lot of my personal professional experiences are on chaos, but I've also grew up in institutional environment, went to like good schools where there's order. And I think this industry is just about that. I think, you have to have wisdom and hunger, and those things don't always go together. And I just, in this industry just fits me. I love it.
That's great. I think David and I share very similar feelings on that front. So Medici, obviously there's plenty of demand, probably from funds to meet allocators. Everybody needs capital, and for protocols to meet investors. So I'm sure everybody wants to come to Medici, but can everybody come to Medici? How does one get into this network?
Yeah, good question. I mean, throwing a Medici event's like throwing a wedding every year. You're going to piss some people off. People are going to hate you. They're not going to like where they sat. They're not going to like, who they got the access to. If they got into the right event. Medici events are like events within events. So we don't give full of access to everyone. We get full access to maybe 150 people, and then partial access to another 50. We still have room for everyone. Scarcity is our strength. It allows us to curate the best people. And we have a system. It's kind of a flywheel is really the way I think about it. So it starts with venture funds. We've curated 30 great venture funds. We make them members. And they have the right to invite protocols to our events and bring them on stage as long as they have a top token. We don't want VCs congratulating themselves. We don't want a VC on stage like, look at this hot project I backed that no one can get into. We think it's much more interesting for a project to be on stage after they have a token, celebrate decentralization, and everyone has to pay attention. I get excited by creating some FOMO for people. As David works with me really closely at Finality, he knows how much I like to create FOMO. In fact, one of the things I tell my team all the time is Medici by itself as a business, I think has a lot of prospects, but until we establish those things, what I like to say is, I like to quote Bernard Arnault, if you create desire, profit is a consequence. And the profit of it benefits our community at this point. But venture funds write the protocols. Protocols go on stage when they have a token with the venture funds who interview them. I call it proof of reputation. They're staking their reputation on these projects and putting their name on them, essentially. Then the protocols get to come back only if they work with us to help them talk to liquid funds who we invite for free, as long as they take meetings with the protocols and give the protocols feedback on their pitches. And then we invite allocators who are kind of like the grease to the flywheel. They keep it going. And we don't really consider ourselves a cap intro conference. We try and invite the best allocators, the top endowments, the top sovereigns, the top pensions. And then even within that, we don't necessarily want the Web3 champion here at those places. We want them, we like them, we talk to them, but we can't fit everyone. We try and find their boss so that they get more, the Web3 champion, the person who's picking the funds, gets more budget to allocate to the funds. And that's hard to get to. That's the person that's like covering alls for them, or venture for them, who doesn't necessarily, who's getting like a stack of AI stuff, a stack of deep tech stuff, and, is pushing the crypto stack aside, unless it's like 2022 or, maybe next year. We also save some room for all the people that help us. So getting people outside of crypto is the hardest challenge every year. Everyone's expecting us to pull off amazing feat of getting the top allocators. So we always save room for people to help. And no, let me say this for everyone. Helping is not putting you on stage. Let's just say that to the audience. The worst thing you can do is text me before a conference like, yes, I'd love to help, Adam. I'm happy to speak. It doesn't help.
When I went to the first Medici, one thing that struck me the most, and this was 2018, is the quality of the allocators that are there. And, I won't mention names, but like big allocators. And now maybe you could say that seems like, okay, you'd get these folks, but back in 2018, no one was really giving it a shot. So, and I think that's one thing that's let Medici just get such a head start. So I guess I'll ask, why should allocators care, and what's your pitch to them?
Well, by the way, Cambridge Associates has been at our event every year. And I was so happy that this year Joe actually agreed to go on the podcast. The fact that Cambridge even let him go on a podcast and talk about it just shows you how far our industry has come. I started a newsletter one year called Anonymous Allocator. And I had a picture of Ed Norton hugging Meatloaf from Fight Club, at one of the support groups for allocators who secretly love crypto. And we had Joe Dowling interview Olaf from Polychain. Listen, we've come a long way. The regulatory environment helps. People don't have a reason anymore to say no to crypto. They may still not like it. Endowments may not be able to take things to their investment committee that include alumni who sold a dry cleaner business. Okay. But the fact is, we're coming out of the shadows, and look, allocators, there's a lot of different kinds of allocators. So you can go through each one and what their motivations are, but everyone's different. But I think we offer something to everyone.
How would you describe the current allocator profile more broadly? I know we don't want to name exact names, but could you describe how the composition's changed over the years and what it currently looks like?
I think of it 2 by 2, crypto native, non-native, and then Web3 champion. So I want the champions. I want the people who allocate budget, not pick managers, because I want them to be exposed and people go beyond the headlines. If you come to a Medici event, our program should completely blow you out of the water. Okay, you should feel a little nervous that you don't have the complete aptitude to understand everything. Maybe the aptitude, but maybe not the current knowledge or expertise to understand everything that's being said on stage. But I want you to be blown away by the earnestness and the intelligence and the quality of the people that are there, and understand that the narrative is completely different than what you would ever read in the headlines. Kind of like Plato's cave, right? Like, it's like, whoa. I want them to feel like they just like were in Plato's cave. Like the headlines are like the shadows. This is real. And then look, we expose big idling endowments, big sovereign wealth funds, big pension funds, and some big family offices to the top founders of funds and let them do their thing. Medici's a marketplace for ideas. But look, I'd say we want them to invest in venture funds. We want them to invest in liquid funds. We want to invest in the majors. the Bitcoins, Ethereums, or Solanas just to get going. That's just good for our industry too, right? The more they buy Bitcoin ETH, the more it unlocks all the OG interest so they can recycle into the alts, right? But it also establishes the credibility of the industry. And maybe they'll buy a Bitcoin Plus product that uses Babylon for yield or Eigenlayer for yield. So I think, people are different at different levels. There's all kinds of restrictions, that stop people from doing this. David, I'm sure we'll talk about this later. I know that you're excited about what's happening in the digital asset treasury space, which is a new great way to access this space. I mean, look, I think venture funds are a great investment for certain reasons. I think liquid funds are a good investment for certain reasons. And I think the majors are good investments for certain reasons. And whether you hold them directly and stake them, or stake them, or hold them through an ETF, ETN, or a DAT, that's great too. And I'm happy to dig into any one of those things and my thoughts on it.
I love that new terminology. There's so many different, nomenclatures going around for these entities that are buying crypto and putting on balance sheet. I think that works for me.
Well, you guys probably know this about me. I don't use the word crypto. Like, you can't go to Mike Milken and my dad. My dad visibly got mad at me the one time that I used the word junk bonds in front of him. You can't say that word. And I think that like crypto is such a negative connotation that it just like changes the conversation. But I had an argument, not an argument. There's this allocator who I think likes me. He's an RIA. I had a meeting today, and I think he was a little put off because he said, Adam, there's blockchain and there's crypto. And I go, there literally is no difference. And I try to say it nicely. I was like, he goes, well, I talked to a lot of funds and they tell me that. I go, that's because they're fundraising. Maybe I'm a bad fundraiser and I just like to just be direct, but it's the same thing. People just like the word blockchain better, and in fact, my mother-in-law, like during the whole 3AC Luna, days, like they were pretty nervous about what their son-in-law did for a living. And my dad, who lived through the junk bond high yield transition, said to me, Adam, it's okay. Just tell your mother-in-law it's called blockchain. And it worked. It legit worked.
Yeah, I probably need to come around to that view. I think when I hear blockchain, I think of a lot of conversations back in like the 2017 cycle when there was a common refrain of blockchain, not Bitcoin, which, was proven to be incorrect. Public blockchains are the way forward.
Well, this may be a good segue, Sean, to talk about like, why you should invest in venture. Like, this is the new internet. Okay. This is the new internet. That's what blockchain is. Okay. First of all, I think blockchain is a new internet. It's private property in the internet. And what does that mean? It means a lot of things, but it's the idea that you could take your data, in my opinion, okay, and use it to access new kinds of services and get access to ownership in all these services. It's kind of like stock options for users. Now, the way I see it happening, I see this new internet being built and I see new services being done. We can talk more being rolled out today that will be highly disruptive to Web 2. Dare I say, break the way the internet business model works today. Okay. And I think that these venture funds are a great way to invest in this space. I think that blockchain is highly capital efficient. So it's way better than AI and deep tech. It's not just about value creation. It's also about value capture. And as far as I know, the AI stuff is being captured by the cloud providers. And I think that this new internet is a incredibly exciting opportunity for allocators to invest in. They can access top decile funds in a space that goes liquid much faster.
You talked a lot about the venture versus liquid. You obviously have both at the conference. You have a pretty good viewpoint too into how allocators think about both. I'd love to get your thoughts on venture versus liquid, and what's your view there?
Yeah, well, whenever I get on the phone with an allocator, I usually start by bringing up a company, a real world use case. That's what they like to hear. And by the way, I didn't really finish the one thought, Sean, on what you said before. Like this idea of a token, like I don't think you actually need a token use Web3. Like, the things I'm excited about today are Web2 applications built using Web3 infrastructure. You don't necessarily need a token today, but you need the blockchain. But the thing is, everyone will also have a token, and the value will accrue to the token. So yes, you can say blockchain without tokens, but eventually the value is all going to accrue to the token. That's what's the power of these things. It's what's going to make these things bigger and better and decentralized and global to support global applications. And so from the venture side, look, invest in blockchain. I think there's a bunch of great funds. You know, some of them, Liberty City Ventures, that don't touch tokens. I think they're great. They're going to make a lot of money, and they probably already made a lot of money. But I believe that over time, more and more value will accrue to the tokens. So every deal that I do with my fund, and that a lot of the funds I know do, involve tokens, and they will be really valuable. Ondo has a product, OUSG. Okay, Ondo, that is a tokenized product. You wouldn't necessarily consider OUSG a token. It's a RWA, but it now exists on the Ondo chain, and the Ondo chain is permissioned, which probably doesn't need a token. But guess what? Ondo also has a token, and we invested 60 million, and now it trades at 9 billion. So avoid the token if you want. Fine, you know, like more value for the rest of us. And for liquid funds, you know, there's a problem right now, right? There's a lot of venture money, 80 billion of venture money. And this money is, you could say there's an overhang of venture capital, but I personally believe that it's a very diverse space. So venture capital doesn't always flow to all the right places. Like there's a lot of water in the world, but it's not all in the places you need it to be. But, you know, there are crowded trades, and we invested some crowded trades because there's things we believe in. We invested in Miden personally. You know, I think it's a really exciting company, and it was crowded and expensive, but it's also a great project that could be really, really big, multiple billions, tens of billions of dollars. At some point, you know, we all like this idea that tokens unlock quickly, but obviously, David and Sean, you're very familiar with the idea that these projects, we're not immediately liquid. Everyone else is liquid. We're not. We unlock over 4 years, linearly. And that's a huge opportunity for liquid funds to come in after the first unlock and get into really low valuations and be immediately liquid. So I look at like the liquid market as almost like the antidote to the growth equity space. Bill Gurley was on Invest for the Best. He talked about the difference between, like, he talked about all these late stage funds cutting big checks, but they're not late checks, and big checks are not the same thing. Like a $300 million investment in an AI company that's 12 months old is not a late stage check, but the only one that's able to cut that check is a late stage fund. Okay? Like, we're marking the market every day with a growth portfolio in your fund, David. Like, that's exciting. Maybe allocators don't like that. Maybe they don't want the marks, but there's incredible transparency around that. And look, it's not for everyone. It's hard for a founder to manage that ups and downs. But there's also something unhealthy about how illiquid it is to have these marks based on 2021 prices. So I think liquid there's only 10, as you know, there's only 10 billion of liquid money in crypto, of institutional long biased money. And so that creates a unique opportunity for them to have a big stick with some of these companies and tell them what to do and help them grow up and focus on revenue and good disclosures and all those things. So I'm excited about both. And by the way, David, Sean, where do these liquid fund guys come from? Who did they work for before they started liquid funds?
Probably traditional finance, Wall Street funds.
Exactly. Did some of them work for hedge funds?
A lot more.
I don't know if the fund's still around, but Brad Gerstner told me one point from Altimeter that he, you know, was backing a kid that was spinning out of his firm. Okay. And I assume that Brad was an LP in it. So when some liquid fund says, I like BitTensor or I like Eigenlayer, you know, they're going to tell their LPs in a letter. And maybe over lunch, she'll tell Brad, I love this token. And Brad's going to say, my back office won't let me buy it. This sucks. What do I do? Guess what? Digital asset treasury time, MicroStrategy for BitTensor, MicroStrategy for Eigenlayer. And then he'll be able to buy it. And eventually his back office will say, why is there this huge ARB here? Like, why aren't we just buying the underlying? He goes, because you told me I fucking couldn't do it. Let me go do it. And that's how the game changes, in my opinion.
Probably a good transition to talk a bit more about your investment business at Finality Capital. You know, I sense a couple of key themes. You mentioned a couple of restaking protocols. I was wondering if perhaps you could succinctly describe your thesis at Finality and how that might differ from other investors in the space.
For instance, you had Tushar and Jito on, and they did a financial model on Jito, which is an amazing company. You like Jito, I like Jito, but Tushar underwrote their restaking business to zero. He said that we don't. And it's ironic, but like Lucas likes his restaking business. He's very excited about it. Right? And it might even be as a way to save, like really like prop up, like help Solana deal with a lot of yield issues for the smaller validators. So what I love about Medici is it's a marketplace for ideas. I have a partner named Kamel. David knows him. He's brilliant. He liked Avalanche when no one else liked Avalanche. Our firm is rooted in being non-consensus. And he liked Avalanche because of what's called shared security. It's an esoteric term, but the way I think about Bitcoin and ETH is that it may be a productive asset, it may not be, but at the end of the day, it has value that people believe in. And you can use that economic security to power new services. Okay. Centralized intermediaries, they get economic rents for providing a service, and they get penalized by governments and courts for acting maliciously. Well, I believe that there's going to be a new internet that makes your data portable, and that is happening now. It's happening because of eigenlayer. It's happening because of restaking. It's happening because of opacity, which is building like a plaid for all of your data, not just your financial data. And that's going to create new services, make new services available that are completely orthogonal to the way the internet works today. And that's going to create convergence, which is going to mean we need more business founders building on a mature tech stack, which is not what we have today. We have an immature tech stack that's rapidly maturing. But in Web 2, in 2006, when AWS came out, we had a rapidly maturing tech stack that allowed business founders to come in and build great applications. And no longer did you have VCs saying, let's fire the CEO and hire a business guy. Let's bring in Eric Schmidt. Let's bring in John Chambers. Now it's founders fund. Let's support the founders. Let's help them grow with these companies. That's because of the tech stack. It's about the underlying innovation. I personally can't evaluate this technology. My partner can, but I can't evaluate technical trends. And I see this trend happening where the tech stack is maturing. And to give you an example, I start every meeting with an allocator this way. I bring up an example of a real world use case. That's what they want to hear about. They don't care about gaming. They want to hear about things like Earnify, would let you get access to your wage data without permission from Gusto or your employer, which competes with Built and Daily Pay. Built is backed by General Catalyst, a $3 billion valuation. Daily Pay is a big company, unicorn. And Earnify competes with both. And it was number one in the App Store for finance. And it exists today because of opacity, which is built on eigenlayer. Okay? That's happening now, but this is not in the headlines. Okay? And we need more funds that have business experience and expertise and networks outside of crypto that can help people launch a business, not just launch a token. That is the future of VC. That's what we think we are. I think other firms will bring in more business expertise from, we're relatively older for other VCs in this space. Today, I think we have an advantage there, but I believe that other firms that are smart will swallow their pride and hire people with those kinds of experience and networks. And I think you'll have Web 2 firms that can't get into the hottest AI deal, that don't like the dynamics of VC, that will start spending time in blockchain because they have great experience. And today, I think we're at the bleeding edge. We're backing convergence. We want to be the top firm to help bridge Web 2 with Web 3, and it's happening today.
Yeah, that definitely came through in the attendee list at Medici LA. I think I recall a presentation from a on-chain ticketing platform that you guys backed, and it was all
right, Sean, hopefully not too much, man. I try and not play too many favorites. I got yelled at by one founder who is one of our investments that I didn't put on stage, and we put one of his competitors on stage, and he didn't really like that. But the fact is, we want the industry to win. It's a marketplace for ideas. Yeah, my ideas get prominence. Okay, I joke around that there's this one family office that can name 4 tokens: Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, and eigenlayer. Okay, I'm sure I had a part to play in that, but I really want other people and other funds to take advantage of this platform to share their ideas.
No, that makes sense.
But yeah, real world use cases is what these allocators want to see. Convergence is happening, and we need more business founders building on this, not tech founders.
Unfortunately, you have David, my podcasting partner, running the liquid side of the house with Kamel. But, you have the venture fund and Medici. How do you do it all?
By having great teammates. Honestly, I can't do it all. I just can't. I mean, David, I've been trying to get to work with me for 8 years. How many years, David, since I met you? You were working with my friend Juan from business school. He's a great guy, brilliant. Juan Bruce, shout out. IDEO, helped design the iPhone. Brilliant guy. Helped get me into crypto. David, your background, being head of research at Grayscale. I knew you before that. I was so proud of you for getting that role. And you called me and, wanted to help us start a liquid fund. And little did you know, we were in the middle of our offsite talking about starting a liquid fund. We had you immediately fly out to California. And I think we sealed the deal like you and Kamel sealed the deal when you went to the bathroom for a minute.
We had breakfast at Starbucks. But we have been trying to make it happen for a while.
Listen, the liquid fund is in some ways like Medici's like a permission protocol. Okay. And Finality is one of the venture firm is the first app. And I knew how to build that app because I've done venture capital. I'm kind of a reluctant venture capitalist. I knew how to do it. I got my ass handed to me doing it. But now, Bernard Malamud says you have two lives, life you learn with and life you live with. I'm on the life I live with. Okay. I turned 50 on Thursday. Like, this is what I'm good at and I'm comfortable with that. I don't know how to be a hedge fund manager, but my partner does and David does. And they make a great team and they leverage this platform. The one complaint on Finality probably should be from founders that we're not, available that much. I'm not always available because I'm so busy. You ask me how I do it all. I'm not that available for people, but I'm constantly in the background building things that help us win and help the industry win. Medici is one of those things that help all our members win, but it also helps Finality Ventures and it helps Finality Liquid Fund. This podcast, right? David's a host. It's great for Finality, right? But it's also great for the industry. And until that's a problem, then we should keep doing it. And look, I think the liquid fund, I don't know how much you want to get into Kamel's signal, but everyone should follow Kamel Mokaden on Twitter for his signal that he's sharing until our fund's big enough. But right now, this free alpha out there as he shares his signal, his quantitative signal from his years at Crable Capital Management on what he thinks crypto prices are going to do. On January 20th, he posted that the market was going to implode as everyone's getting ready to celebrate their first crypto ball. You guys should have Kamel on yourself separately, actually, to talk about this because he's got a lot of great ideas and I think it's appropriate. And, maybe I describe Finality as a guinea pig for Medici. So if not, you can eventually have other managers on. I don't care. Have other members on. It's great.
I think that would be great. Actually today we did a call with an allocator and we talked about the signal and they were very impressed, as most are. And he definitely did call that on the top. And it's worked out well for us.
Yeah. The problem with most liquid funds is that everyone, like allocators don't want the marks and they want to cut big checks. And the best way to do that is combine that in one fund that does liquid and venture. And that's it. But that perverts incentives.
I actually had a call yesterday with a fund, I won't mention the name, a venture fund. They were actually telling me they're starting to hear the opposite. They are now starting to hear people complain that venture and liquid is together in them.
Well, now they are, but originally that's why. But now they have a problem. They've got too much money locked up in these vehicles that aren't marked to market. They can't get their money out. And now a lot of these institutions, like especially endowments, they've got tax issues, like this new tax bill is coming out. They need to be able to get their money out in a year. So actually, I agree with you, David. I think it's totally flipping. I think that, 5 years ago, okay, I met, or 6 years ago, maybe even longer. Actually, 8 years ago, I met Ben Foreman at Parify when he was Blocktree, okay? He wanted to come to my conference. He was too small. I didn't let him in. I'm lucky he forgave me because now he's huge and a really important fund and one of the biggest funds in the space, okay? And a lot of these venture funds that do both look down on some of these venture liquid funds. But I think they're wrong. In 5 years, we're going to be begging these guys to come to our events. They're going to be huge. I think allocators are going to completely flip. They like the liquidity. They're willing to take the marks. It's everything they've been looking for. The only thing they have to do now is get comfortable with crypto, that it's actually not a scam, that there's real world use cases. But it's perfect for them. And what about when traditional VC funds or projects actually look at tokenization as an option for them? By the way, if I can just throw out one little piece of alpha that I think, you connect me on this, guys, but Bill Gurley talked about fixing the IPO market. I'm not sure a lot of these funds want to fix it. These late stage venture businesses, non-crypto businesses want to fix the IPO market because there's no value being public if you don't have a currency, if you can't use your currency to buy companies. The problem is the FTC, in my opinion. The FTC won't let you buy anything. Meta just cut a deal with Scale AI for half the business, like 49% of the business, at a $14 billion valuation, hired Alex Wang as the CEO of AI. They'd rather just buy the company, but the FTC will never let that happen. But if they did, Scale AI would just go public and they would be the acquirer. Why deal with all the drama if you can't even use the currency? So it's an interesting time. I think liquid funds are going to be absolutely monster. And I think the allocators are realizing that. And it'll even get bigger when they realize the real use cases that are happening right now. And that'll be when they see Web 2 firms start doing the same thing.
I think something that's interesting that ties into both those is I saw JP Morgan was recommending their clients actually invest in liquid markets. in digital assets over, and hedge funds over private markets. And back in with the Bill Gurley thing, some of these comments, like I think like crypto VC or Web3 VC, blockchain VC, it seems like could be one of the few places where you can get liquidity in a reasonable time frame in venture, right? Because of tokens, you talked about that. And now with this regulatory environment. But tying into this regulatory environment, there's some big news today on stablecoins. We're pretty close, obviously, on this legislation. And I think some folks might have saw that it seems like JP Morgan is going to be launching a stablecoin on Base. Adam, what do you think about stablecoins? What's your thoughts there?
Okay, look, I'm an investor in Athena. I was an investor in Ondo, which isn't really a stablecoin, but I guess it competes with stablecoins in some way because, like in countries like Thailand, you're not allowed to use stablecoins, but you can't hold them for store value. So you might as well own a treasury that is yield bearing. Personally, I don't invest that much in stablecoin businesses, and I think it's gonna be a bloodbath. There's big money out there. It's one of those crowded trades. And I was on the phone with a big VC firm, and they told me, traditional VC, and they told me, like, we're really excited about stablecoins. They were intrigued by what I talked about with like web proofs, zk-TLS, like data portability, but they're focused on stablecoins. Personally, I don't care. I hope they win. I hope all my portfolio, all the funds that come to Medici, the people that bet on stablecoins win. Okay? Hope you all do great. What I'm excited about is that stablecoins are going to lay the groundwork for a new era of American dominance, blockchain prominence, and global capital markets. Everyone in the world, America is a meme. Okay? It's the greatest meme on earth. And it has a stable coin. And the meme is American dream, right? It's the American dream. And if there's a California dream, it doesn't have a meme coin. The American dream does have a meme coin. It's called the US dollar. You can own a piece of the American economy. Once people around the world are holding the USMC or maybe USDT, and they're doing it with a Privy wallet that's now owned by Stripe, and they don't even know they're holding it, they're going to want access to other financial products in the US. They're going to want other memes. They're going to want America plus AI. Okay? They're going to want, and Palantir is going to give it to them, fractionalized Palantir. Okay? And Alice Karp will lower his cost of capital dramatically this way, increase his reach, and become one of the Magnificent Eight. Because then someone will tokenize his tokenized fractional ownership and wrap that in the deck. Okay? It's going to be insane. And maybe after that, people are going to want America plus AI plus defense. And they'll get fractionalized Endural or a perp dex. Maybe they'll have a perp dex of open AI, SpaceX, access to Endural or other hot companies in the space. So I'm excited about what stablecoins do for, promoting the dollar, promoting American financial security, promoting the tokenization of RWAs, and then the blockchains that these things run on, like Ondo Chain or Converge from Athena or Avalanche or Ethereum or Base or Monad, or Rise or Megith or Maiden, wherever it happens. It's super exciting.
You already started talking about the future outlook for the space and capital formation on chain. So I'm curious, how do you view the future for Medici? 5-10 years out, what does Medici look like?
We are survivors. I was super nervous, actually. I've never been more nervous about Medici. I mean, I was nervous in 19 when it was a down mark, we were doing an event in the bear market. But there I was just worried about losing money. My own personal money, and tell my wife who couldn't go on vacation that summer that I wanted to save money. I was actually paranoid this year because the industry was starting to be embraced. And I was worried. Medici's not a big company. We don't have like a huge budget. We punch above our weight. And I was worried that we'd be left behind. Kind of like I joke around that I didn't want to be Mariah Carey's high school boyfriend that convinced her to move to New York to start her music career, and where she met Tommy Mottola and became, her husband and manager. Okay. I was not going to get left behind. So we doubled our budget this year. Okay. We amped up production. We hired a new president. We just took the head of research from Masari now as our new president. We got Razi on the team. Obviously we have Amira. We have, someone new joining. Gina joined us. So we have I've just ramped up the team. We have our production team for the events, Brent Ross. We just have I built up the team. And the way I think about it, there's events, there's research, and then there's everything else. Okay. And membership gets access events, they get access to research. But that community we have is going to help us build other products. And when I started this thing, I thought maybe there'd be an OCIO business or there'd be a ETF business. I look at Finality as my asset management business. I think Medici should be in the passive asset management space over time. That we should be, if Van Eck is and Hashtags and Bitwise are BlackRock, I kind of see Medici being ARK Invest. Maybe some more exotic strategies and trading strategies. Maybe they should be doing things around themes, but starting with the needs of our founders, of our members, venture funds, liquid funds, and especially protocols, helping them get access to new markets. And if we can create passive asset management products or even actively managed ETFs, but not actively managed by us, but by our community, and maybe Finality is one of those customers, those providers, I see that being a natural place for us to go. And that's what the team is working on.
That's a really exciting future. Honestly, Adam, I think you're heading down a great path. Before we wrap it up, are there any final takeaways?
David, you're a research advisor to Medici. And Sean, I think you are too now, right?
I don't want to show, but I am a research advisor. I try to provide I think I give advice. I think but hey, you can tell me. Any final takeaways for folks you want to leave us with?
I just think it's really important to understand that the headlines are not covering what the story's about, and that's okay. This is when the money's gonna be made. There are real world use cases, happening. And I think people need to really understand those. And you can't find them on mainstream media. And I've been talking to some of the Web 2 press, and they just don't care. They don't understand it. Okay. Some people do. Hopefully some people will talk about this soon. I'm working really hard to get that story out there. But, I just had a friend of mine from business school who's a very successful tech executive backed 3 projects of mine leveraging zk-TLS. Okay. Real world use cases. And I'm going to give you an example of a product I don't see out there, but I'd love to see. I'd love to see, someone take my Apple Watch data, my Whoop data, my Fitbit data, my Strava data, and create a health insurance product around that. And the more data I add and the more that service can access that data, the lower my insurance costs are for me and my team. And, Apple should do that. Strava should do it. Fitbit should do it. Whoop should do it. But the way the internet feels today is everyone's incentivized to silo your data to keep you there, to retain you. And that's just not the best service. I'm freaking sick of it, honestly. I'm sick of searching through all my apps to find a message. I want AI agents to have my memory and not waste AI tokens, reteaching each agent how to answer my question and know who I am. I want to own that data, not to monetize that data for me, but to access better services that might actually make AI companies more profitable. The AI cloud, AI providers are shooting themselves in the foot because maybe they have the best cloud, but they're wasting tokens. The AI blockchain, the decentralized blockchains made you better because you're not going to have to waste tokens because you're going to come with your data. They're going to know who you are immediately. They don't have to waste it on learning who you are. How many prompts does it take to get the answer you want? That's a metric we should have all AI companies report, right? The number of prompts to get to the answer, the number of tokens. I don't know if that's a thing out there, but I want to see health insurance based on me having data portability, and blockchain enables that. zk-TLS. Everyone should go Google zk-TLS. David, go put a couple links here for this show about zk-TLS for more follow-up on zk-TLS and web proofs. But this is the new internet. It's going to completely disrupt Web 2. And you can play this through venture in crypto. You can play this through liquid funds. And you can even play this through the majors. Because Ethereum and Bitcoin are going to benefit from this because these things are going to power this new internet. And they're going to earn massive amounts of yield. And the value accrual of these things will change. Bitcoin will become a productive asset. Ethereum will become a more productive asset. And Solana, mark my words, I'm channeling my partner Kamel, will also support restaking in a major way because middleware will become their moat.
Well, there you have it, folks. A great thesis or a well-articulated thesis and a request for a startup. So if you're a founder out there listening and want to take Adam up on his offer, hit him up. And on that note, Adam, if people are interested in learning more about Medici or perhaps participating in the network, who should they reach out to?
At Network Medici, at Finality Cap, Adam_Winnick, Medium at Adam_Winnick. And look, if you're a Web 2 builder, we want to talk to you. If you're a champion, we want to talk to you. If you're just a Web 3 champion, we still want to talk to you. We don't have a room. I can't promise you have room in Medici events today, but we're working on other things to create value for you. So look, thanks guys. And you guys are doing amazing work. This podcast is a killer. I just love the depth of the conversation that's happening here. Anyone out there that cares about investing in crypto or learning about crypto, like they just need to listen to this podcast. It's just, and thank you guys for doing what you do, because I know we don't pay you a lot. We pay you nothing, and that creates the nice independence here. So I know we tried to get you do a project the other day, and you turned us down. So I'm going to call you later to find out why you don't like it. But that's what I love about this thing, is that everyone's trying to win.
That's right, baby. Winning's our North Star. But I appreciate the sentiments. For the record, we did not ask you to say that, but thank you. Adam, really appreciate you stopping by. This is a great conversation. Hopefully we can do, maybe a, semi-annual update on this podcast. This was great.
Thanks a lot, Adam.
Thanks, guys.
That's a wrap for this episode of Level Up, where liquid token protocols meet the sharpest minds in institutional investing.
If you found value in today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe and share it with your network.
For more deep dives into blockchain's most compelling projects, reach out to us or follow the Medici Network for more insights. Until next time, keep leveling up.